the stage yours.
That's our table.
Is this our table?
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon. I'm KJ.
I'm Sharil Hamdan.
And we do a podcast that you may have heard of called Keluar Sekejap. And we're doing a special.
It's got short. Ooh. Yes, I can speak. Yeah, I guess while we figure out what's happening, that seemed like a blowout, literally a blowout. Thanks to MSA Festival and Awards for and Media Specialists Association for having us here. Maybe a big round of applause to the Media Specialists Association for running an event, KJ, that I guess as newcomers to this industry, if we can call ourselves that, I wasn't quite aware of. Were you more acquainted to this MSA Awards?
No, this is my first time actually. And I've not been in this hotel and this ballroom since 2020, actually.
Yeah. Do you want to tell them who dropped you off?
Did you drop me off?
I dropped you off.
You dropped me off?
I wasn't an MP, so I was just a driver.
But I can't remember why I was here.
The good food, obviously, the good food.
Okay, so we are relatively new to this industry, but we're happy to be here, and we're going to talk a bit about media. I've asked for it's very difficult to do a live show because when we do it in the studio, I'm talking to him, he's talking to me, and when we do a live show, we tend to also talk to the audience, which makes the recording later a bit different. So whenever we do live shows, it works with the live audience, but it doesn't do well on video, I guess, because we're not speaking to each other. Okay, we'll try to speak to each other, and then we're going to open up for questions later because we wanted to make it a bit more interactive. So,
and for the purposes of whatever clip we upload, kita kena minta izin lah berbicara dalam bahasa Inggeris kejap untuk episod ini.
So we're going to do it in both languages, and we'll come in and out of English and Malay. So, Sharil, nak mula dengan apa hari ni? Sharil, seperti biasa kita buat episod KS ni, kita tanya khabar dulu. Apa yang Sharil telah buat selama beberapa hari yang lepas. Episod yang last kita, boleh tahan juga viewership dia?
Ya. So selepas rakaman episod kita yang lepas, saya pada minggu ini, this is the end of the week, beberapa perkara. Satu, hadir dalam satu sesi forum ataupun satu sesi sidang kemuncak daripada Kementerian Tenaga, Petra, which was talking about sustainability. So I quite enjoyed that session where I moderated dengan beberapa ahli panel yang lain. On the other side of the fence, I guess the English Premier League season has started.
Can I ask you a question? When you moderate these things, do you get paid?
Sometimes. Sometimes I'm happy to do it pro bono like the last one.
Okay.
But now that we're out of politics, I think we're quite open that we do monetize some of our capabilities, if we can say that.
Because I think you cannibalize some of the gigs that I'm supposed to do.
Do I really?
Yeah.
We go for the same market?
If they have a budget, they'll go for you lah.
See? No, I think it depends what kind of character they want to put on stage. They want a provocative one, they go for you, and they want the vanilla, then the good vanilla one, they come for me.
Yeah, okay. So, football.
Yes, so that's the other piece that I've been watching last week, and also just listening to the podcasts that I listen to. So, apart from doing our own podcast, we have favorite podcasts, and a couple that I really enjoy is The Rest is Football. And another one is The Guardian Football Weekly. So I have two podcasts that I listen almost religiously every week.
But there's a lot of swearing on The Rest is Football.
By one in particular, Alan Shearer.
Alan Shearer.
Yeah, he's called Sweary Al on the show.
Okay.
But it's good. It's good analysis.
Yeah. Speaking about football, ada berita yang hangat pada hari ini. Kita nak bincang juga. Then this is a public interest issue, I think. There are elections for sports associations. So Kuala Lumpur Football Association, Persatuan Bola Sepak Kuala Lumpur akan ada pemilihan dia untuk jawatan presiden, timbalan presiden, naib presiden dan sebagainya, buat kali pertama dalam sejarah, for the first time in history, the presidency will be contested by two cabinet ministers from the same political party.
Who are they?
So Nick Nazmi is going to go for president of KLFA, and he's going up against one of my favorite ministers and members of parliament, Fahmi Fazil.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Yeah. And what do you think about this? Do you think it's on side?
I find it odd.
Yeah.
I find it very odd that not that politicians will go after sports associations, because I think for better or worse that's something that we're quite used to. What's very odd is that two politicians from the same cabinet and the same political party, clearly not from the same faction.
Are they not?
From, I think if you read between the lines and actually beyond that, from my understanding, they both wanted to be MP for Lembah Pantai at one point.
Oh,
They
okay.
both wanted to be MP for Lembah Pantai. Or is it Setiawangsa? I get confused. Both of them were gunning for the same seat
Yep.
early on in their parliamentary career. That would have been 2008, I think. And one won over the other, either Setiawangsa, whatever, whichever one it was. And I guess that factional divide is now playing out in football association elections.
But coming back to the point, because I think, after the Olympics, banyak komen yang kita dengar berkenaan dengan Persatuan Sukan. We won't go in,
Baikot komen tentang komen kita.
we won't go in. I mean, I don't want to talk about her, but about sports associations in general. Jadi komen yang kita paling banyak dengar adalah kenapa Persatuan Sukan kita tidak dipimpin oleh bekas atlet ataupun orang yang ada pengalaman dalam bidang sukan. Why are our sports associations not led by ex-athletes, and why do they tend to be led by politicians or failed politicians? Do you have any views on this? I mean, I have, but maybe you want to say something?
So, as a general rule, I wish it wasn't so prevalent. And I wish those who were in those positions can credibly say themselves to be capable and sort of in the right position to actually help the sport that they are representing. If they happen to be politicians, sure. But that shouldn't be as prevalent as it is now, because that suggests something else is happening.
Yeah. I think, when I was at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, we tried to get more athletes to come into the sports associations. But one of the things that they always were reluctant to take a leadership position, one of the reasons was because of the requirement for raising money. A lot of these sports associations have to raise money for their activities, untuk penganjuran pertandingan, for tournaments, competitions, and things like that. And they felt very, very ill-equipped to be able to lead the charge in terms of raising the money and raising the sponsorship. And that's why they liked being under either a big corporate figure or politician or ex-politician who would be more used to raising that kind of money for the sports association. So that's the part of it, I guess, that a lot of people who comment saying that politicians should stay out of sports associations don't see, because I think we can get around it by having more athletes who are exposed and trained in raising funds, in pitching and marketing to corporates to raise money. But at the moment, that's their big reservation.
And I'm guessing, KJ, it's not just raising money, it's just the administrative and leadership function as a whole, right? Which probably privileges certain types of professions like politicians, like certain corporate leaders, and that's the point that you're trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, running a sports association now, you have to have a CEO, you have to have managers taking care of advertising, taking care of marketing, taking care of the accounts and everything. So, I'd love to see more athletes get in, but I think they also are, they can get a bit worried about and overwhelmed with the responsibilities. Anyway, that's on that. So who are you supporting, Fahmi or Nazmi?
I guess it depends beyond the two individuals. One, I'm closer to one, and I don't think any prizes for guessing which one. it's also who else is part of their crew. Because presumably KJ, they're not running individually without the backing of other people who want to be part of their team, right? So do you have any insights on those?
Yeah, 100%. So, Nazmi, he has a whole list, but they both have a whole list. They call it Chai.
UMNO style.
Both have a Chai, UMNO style. So deputy president, vice
Could explain
president.
what Chai is.
Chai is like a list. So when we used to contest in UMNO, for UMNO youth and for positions in UMNO, you would normally contest as an individual, but together with your team.
Unofficially.
Unofficially. You're not allowed to have Chai, the list. But the night before, I mean, this was in the days before WhatsApp, we used to actually write it out and pass the Chai around. But nowadays, you just WhatsApp the Chai lah.
But so you still print stuff.
Still print, okay. So Nazmi and Fahmi have their own Chai. And Fahmi's Chai is all UMNO.
Oh, really? Who?
Yeah. Nazmi's Chai is, there's a member of parliament, a couple of members of parliament. So very, very, very heavy politics.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, transformation is real. They're now UMNO. Well done. Anyway, so what else
Nazmi is also, I think, about to launch a podcast.
Is he?
I'm meant to be on his podcast this weekend.
Oh.
So, he's being UMNO, or he's copying UMNO in more ways than one.
Okay.
Even the good stuff.
So you're the first guest?
I don't know if I'm the first guest, but I've been asked to show up.
Yeah, we'll talk about podcasts later. What else is new? So PM just came back from where? India?
From India.
Yeah, impressive numbers again.
Impressive numbers announced as always. Yep. And as always, there will be healthy skepticism about how much of that will be translated. Yep. I suppose a storm in a teacup among some commentators in social media when they saw photos of him holding hands with Narendra Modi. And, we'll speak about this if we want to a bit. About,
what was wrong with that?
Particularly, I guess, about India's stance on Gaza, as well as the increasing violence, marginalization of Muslim communities in India the last 10 years.
So what was PM supposed to do? Like push his hand away?
No. I guess in the world of optics and social media, 10 seconds, those sort of body language, signaling can be construed or misconstrued by folks who want to.
But Modi is quite a touchy-feely guy.
Is he?
I don't know personally, but from what I've seen, he's pretty touchy-feely. Not just with PMX, but he likes to give a hug to counterparts, prime ministers, presidents who he is visiting or who is visiting him in India.
And PMX also has that vibe, right, of being...
I'm not going to go there.
Not in the sense of, sort of showcasing how comfortable he is with other world leaders. So he's not the uptight type of world leader. He's not the aloof type of world leader. He wants to be seen as I suppose, affable. Affable,
yeah. So there was this, so he sang apparently. Did you see that?
No, who? PM?
Yeah.
Our PM?
Yeah. Oh. He sang a Hindustan song.
Can you give a preview?
I can't. Believe it or not, I don't speak Hindi.
Right.
Yeah. But so he sang, and that caught the imagination of social media in India. And of course, as you said, these billions were announced. I wanted to ask you a question, because I know you work with a lot of fund managers now in your new role, your consulting firm. How do we keep track of whether these billions that are announced by PM, bila diumumkan dia pergi sana, dia pergi sini, berbilion masuk Malaysia, how does the average Malaysian track whether these billions have arrived?
They obviously, in a representative democracy, they would hope that ahli-ahli Parlimen Pembangkang akan tanya lah laporan dan menteri-menteri kena jawab. They will have to give a written answer, right, about what exactly realised investments have been. So let's hope when October sitting happens, that's one of the questions that WAF or whoever opposition MPs will ask, and we'll get the answer, and then we can debate and discuss about that. But I imagine soalan KJ juga membawa kepada, okay, even if you get the actual numbers, how does it translate to the real economy? And that's why instead of, apart from just the numbers of dollars or ringgit, it's also how many jobs that have been created, and maybe showcase in the communications and the videos actual jobs that have come about from these investments.
Yeah.
Actual employees who can speak about those experiences.
Yeah, because I remember the trip to Beijing. This must have been last year, right? And
12 months ago or
12
more.
months ago, again, billions were announced, and we're not quite sure whether those have been realized or not. And whose job would this be?
Correct. Whether it be Malaysian job,
No, I mean, whose job would it be to tell people?
you would imagine it's MIDA.
Yeah.
MIDA, Kementerian Ekonomi maybe?
No, maybe
MOHR?
MITI.
Yeah, MITI
Yeah.
MIDA,
Yeah.
who announced realized investments and and job numbers.
Yeah.
And job. And I suppose in societies like ours, there's also anecdotal evidence also matter.
Yeah.
So if you happen to know someone who knows someone, then it becomes real.
Okay.
But if nobody has heard of somebody being hired by Tesla
Yeah.
or by some big Chinese conglomerate,
Yeah.
then this question becomes more self-perpetuating.
And the other thing to talk about in the backdrop of PM's visit, lawatan PM ke India adalah penyertaan Malaysia dalam apa yang dikenali sebagai BRICS. So, what do you think? Sorry, Nick Nazmi just messaged me.
But he's
Yeah.
got live report.
He got live. Somebody is spying
Somebody
for
is
Nick
like
Nazmi
spying
here.
and just texting.
Nick Nazmi, Sharil supports you over Fahmi.
Somebody
messaged that to. He forwarded that to me.
that Syaril supports Nazmi more than Fahmi.
Yeah.
I wouldn't deny that.
KJ just said he prefers if ex-athletes run sports associations. Whoever's writing this, I got you.
Relax.
So anyway, yeah. So this okay. Organizers said no Q&A as they are afraid audience may ask political questions. This is not from Nazmi. This is from the producer.
Producer.
Yeah. Oh, killjoy. Okay. Anyway,
let's see if they change their mind in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah. Coming back to this backdrop of PM going to India again. So a lot of people have been asking us on comment section of our social media platforms about BRICS. So what do you think?
We haven't been accepted in yet, right?
No.
And last year, was it last year or earlier this year when they had that big summit? A bunch of countries applied, only one or two were accepted.
Something like that.
Something like that. So it's not quite clear whether our wishes will be granted by the current BRICS leadership. I don't think you can look at this in isolation. You got to look at it in an overall strategy of multi-alignment, which I think is clearly what Malaysia wants to be, to show that we can be aligned to both the Western Bloc and the sort of Chinese bloc if and when we want to, and we don't align our ducks in one direction in all different domains. In some domains, we may be here. In some domains, we may be there.
But do you reckon like PMX, dia kata dia nak kita join BRICS, right? So BRICS, for the benefit of audience, I'm sure you all know this, but just to put on record, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It's been expanded to some of these other countries that have applied to join now as well. So it's seen as a counterweight to the G7, more or less. It's seen as a counterweight to Western-led organizations. And it's also seen to be something that is part and parcel of responding to America, trying to contain the rise of China as well as Russia. Do you think bila kita cakap kita nak join BRICS ni, do you think it pisses the Americans off?
I'm sure it does.
Yeah?
I'm sure it does. But it's I guess, our gambit that while it would annoy them, I don't even know is the right geopolitical term, but you get what I mean. We think, that Malaysia thinks it's a worthwhile irritation to do this because of other gains, and that's where it remains to be seen. If we get market access, we get tangible access and tangible benefits from joining BRICS, then that gambit would have paid off.
Yeah.
And here I think we can take inspiration from people like India, who are clearly not going to be China's best friend, but on BRICS, they're part of BRICS. Right? So you can be multi-aligned, and you can sort of assert your own independence and multi-alignment and not be so timid. And I think that's what Malaysia today wants to project. So I'm quite excited about that. Results we'll see in a few years.
Does it lead to things, though? I mean, this is the big discussion in foreign policy circles and circles that look at the effect of geopolitics on economics. Does it lead to really an age where we are going to see de-dollarization? reducing the dependence of using the US dollar as a de facto reserve currency of the world, a de facto currency for trade, global trade. Do you think that's going to happen?
I think it's probably a matter of time. Don't know if it will happen in any meaningful way in our lifetime, in our active lifetime, but I think it will happen. So that's that kind of sort of long-term historical piece to think about. But in the next few decades, I think this multi-alignment position is probably the correct one. And you only have to look at the data center stuff that's been happening in our country, KJ, to see how you have sort of a bifurcation or quasi-bifurcation of that, right? And you have both. You have both the Microsofts of the world, and you also have the sort of, Huawei universe or orbit. And they exist not side by side, but in the same state and in the same country. Yep. So Malaysia is one of those countries in this region that is okay to do both. And both are happy to be here at the same time, and we're not being penalized for our multi-alignment for now.
Yeah, so I think that explains a lot why successive governments here in Malaysia, whether you are the present government today or governments before today, stick to this stance of strategic neutrality.
Correct.
To make sure that we benefit from multi-alignment, as you said. I think that's fair. As a middle country, in Southeast Asia, where we straddle two biggest sea lanes in the world, South China Sea, Straits of Malacca, we're the doorsteps of Taiwan, even Northeast Asia. I think that's the best thing to do, to make sure that you're neutral. Coming to the question of the region, have you seen what's been going on in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think we all have. We've been watching social media, seeing the Peringatan Darurat image. There's a throwback to decades ago. Quite surprising developments for a country that prides itself in democracy after Reformasi, Dia Reformasi.
You want to explain to everyone why this thing's happened?
So what's occurred, for those who haven't read up, is basically after the presidential election a couple of months ago, now you have the regional elections, the gubernatorial elections, which is Jakarta and all the other provinces, and mayoral elections all coming up later this year. Now that Prabowo's presidential-elect and Jokowi is obviously still there, that is the power block that people assume will continue in the next phase. Presumably that power block have their own interests and their own favorites for who wins in some of these key places, including and especially Jakarta. Anyway, so what's occurred is initially there was a rule to a threshold for which a threshold beyond which a threshold under which you cannot be nominated to run in these elections. If I remember correctly, initially the idea was you have to be nominated by political parties that have either 20% seats in the parliament, in their DPR, or you have parties who have 25% of the popular vote. So this means that only big parties can nominate individuals. Now there's one guy, Anies Baswedan, who ran in the presidential elections, did not win, came in second behind Prabowo and Gibran. Gibran is Jokowi's son, who is meant to be favorite for the Jakarta elections. But because all the main political parties now want to be in the orbit of Prabowo, Jokowi, Gibran, they have all ganged up and basically given their support to Ridwan Kamil to be the favorite and almost the sole candidate of any serious note for the Jakarta elections. Surprisingly, Mahkamah Konstitusi, which is their highest court, revised this decision and say, hey, we don't need this high threshold. Let's reduce this threshold and only make it about 7% of the popular vote, if I'm getting my figures correctly, which would have allowed smaller parties to nominate Anies.
Okay.
So that's what that was what happened last week.
Yeah. Was there something else about that age threshold as well?
The other thing was the parliament then said, okay, we're going to challenge this court decision and reinstate that difficult threshold. At the same time, we're going to reduce the minimum age from 30 years old at the point of
registration, whatever,
to 30 years old at the point of inauguration, which would have allowed Kaisang, which is the other son of Jokowi, to run in some other province.
So Jokowi's tried this trick twice now. Twice.
Twice, and for multiple places. Right?
I mean, he seems like such a innocuous guy, right, Jokowi?
Yeah,
mean,
but what we've learned over the last 18 months is that he's not.
Yeah, so I think the vibe that I get in social media is that he's your everyman president. He's not from the elite. He came from nowhere. He was governor. He was mayor of Bogor, and then he became governor of Jakarta. He was a furniture salesman, and he became prime minister. He was not from a big family. He was not from the army, and that's why he's so popular. But within 2 years of leaving office, or before 2 years before leaving office, he's basically stitched up his eldest son to become vice president. And the Constitutional Court revised the minimum age of being able to contest as vice president for him. And that Constitutional Court was chaired by Jokowi's brother-in-law at that point in time.
Right.
And he tried to do that for his youngest son to become a governor, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And that's why people are pissed off.
That's why people are angry, both for that and also clearly trying to block a competitive race in Jakarta. So that's why people have been down on the streets.
And this is going to affect Jokowi's legacy with 2 months left on the clock?
So I'm sure it does. And there's a question mark now about how much Prabowo was involved in this, right? How much do you just put the blame, if you want to call it that, on Jokowi's door? I'm sure Prabowo is also not going to be super forgiving towards Anies because the contest for the presidential election was quite a contentious one.
So I just to wrap up Indonesia, there's one place that I really want to visit.
Nusantara.
Yeah. What do you think? They launched it a couple of weeks ago. Hari Kemerdekaan Indonesia was this year held in Nusantara. So most of you know that Nusantara is this new capital city that Jokowi has created on Borneo Island, somewhere in the southeast, from nothing. What did you think?
It didn't cause as much of a splash as I thought it might have. That's one. Two is some of the remarks that I've been following, not so closely, but following a bit, suggest that Prabowo, he'll still do it.
Scale it back.
But might scale it back.
But it's one of those things that it's either you're all in or you're not, right?
I would have thought so.
You can't scale it back.
But I think the sheer amount of fiscal expenditure you're going to require for that to become what the on-paper vision wanted it to be, for Jokowi wanted it to be, I think that just the scale of it is quite prohibitive.
Yeah.
And there's that clear question about if you're going to spend that much fiscally, should you be spending on that or, in places that clearly still require a lot of developmental help? So that will be part of the debate moving forward.
Did you see the building, the Istana President?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, you didn't see it? So it's a building that's wrapped in a structure that looks like a Garuda.
Okay.
Quite nice.
Right.
Quite nice.
Let's go check it out.
Yep, absolutely. There are no direct flights. You have to fly to Balikpapan and then drive for like 3 hours, I think. Yeah.
We've done worse.
We've done worse. Absolutely. Okay, so you want to get to talking about changing landscape of media?
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Let's talk about podcast a bit. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you want to say? So much that we've covered this topic quite a few times.
Yeah.
Different kinds of audiences.
But no, we're with media practitioners, marketing people. So I think we should talk about our journey, how we got here, where we think this is going to go. So I think we started this a year ago?
A year plus ago.
When we were both, so Shariel was suspended, I was expelled from...
Do you have any FOMO on what's going on right now in KL, in PWTC?
Are we allowed to talk about that?
I don't know. Can. No WhatsApp that, right?
Go ahead. The boss says go ahead. Okay. I don't know if she's a boss, but she looks authoritative, so we're going to go ahead. What's going on there?
I have very little FOMO with it.
Yeah.
And that's when I know I'm happy not to.
So the FOMO is talking about, fear of missing out is talking about, right now in PWTC, or as they call it now, the World Trade Center in KL, is the gathering of annual gathering of Malaysia's grand old party. And
you would have gone since the age of 20...
I've been going since for the last 30 years maybe. 25 years for sure. Yeah. For sure. And I think this is the second year that I've not gone. Yeah.
Same. I would have gone from...
Did you even watch any of the coverage?
I saw it on some Instagram stories of people that I follow.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah.
Do you think it's because of where the party is that nobody really cares anymore? Or do you think it's because we don't care?
Probably, to be honest, more of the latter.
Yeah,
And I think it's also a reflection of how, even when we were in it, presumably the vast majority of the public also feels how we feel now, which is that if you're not really in it, you're not going to be that fast.
Yeah.
You'll just see the headlines.
Yeah.
Just flash through, and then next week is all news. So it's sort of like humbling in the sense that then, okay, even when we thought it was the biggest show in town, it was really the biggest show in town for our circle.
I would say that it was, and maybe still is to some extent, the biggest political show in town. I think nobody really pays much attention to other parties' conventions. But for whatever reason, UMNO's convention or General Assembly is quite newsworthy. Yeah, I feel that way. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember, the week, it's a week-long thing, basically, with all the fringe events and then the main show and everything. It's highly stressful. It's highly stressful.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember how stressed we were?
I'm sure you had even more because you actually headed the wing, right? Which meant that you actually had a show for a day and a half. But even as I went up the ladder, it became more and more stressful because you are invested in it and you're supposed to be performing. You're not just there. You're supposed to, prove and showcase whether through speeches or through your interactions. And that was a big event.
Yeah. I remember because I had to give a speech as youth leader every year. That was a big policy speech. I spent, you were there, you helped me out a few times. I spent weeks or months, laboring over the speech, writing it, rewriting it, and then practicing it. It would go on for about an hour and a half. It was a physical effort.
Yes, I'm sure.
I mean, I must have burned a lot of calories just giving that speech.
Probably, yeah. The longest I spoke was half an hour. And you would have done 3 times that length.
Yeah, so I would do the main speech in the morning. I'd wrap up the speech at night. And then for the main assembly, I'd wrap up the speech on the last day. And it was so uncomfortable sitting on that stage because you were so concerned. So basically, you have to sit on stage for 2 days, listen to representatives from each state speak. And you'd be worried because you're worried that guy is going to attack you.
Yeah.
Say, our youth leaders useless, not doing enough, and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't just the physical effort of preparing speeches. It was also, I think, the psychological stress of not wanting to be attacked. If you're attacked, what happens? If you're booed, what happens? And I've had that done to me so many times. So it's stressful. So I don't really miss it in that sense. But yeah, I miss the vibe sometimes because it's carnival atmosphere. Whatever. Should
we dovetail that into the media component of a big event like that? Because I think when we were in it, just orchestrating what clips came out, towards the latter years when social media was a thing, right? Orchestrating what clips came out, making sure that a good photo is... So all of that, I think, was part of the effort and the endeavor. And anyway, going back to our, I suppose, the main discussion we want to speak now as podcasters, I think safe to say that we stumbled upon this. And we are newcomers to this industry relatively. But we are very lucky that very quickly we built up a following that we are defending and growing now. And some of the learnings, maybe, KJ, you want to share about what makes us stick, you think?
Well, I mean, I think, so Shahril is absolutely right. We stumbled on this. We didn't, we never imagined that this was going to happen. So I called him up one day and said, I just listened to this podcast on Spotify about 2 guys in the UK. So it's called The Rest is Politics, Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell. And they speak about stuff that we speak about, the news of the day, politics, economics, all that kind of stuff. And they were also expelled by their parties. Rory was expelled by the Tories and Alistair was expelled by the Labour Party. And I said, why don't we do something like this? Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that text.
And then you said, okay. And then we bought a couple of microphones. Obviously, it doesn't work today. And then we got a couple of guys who we knew who worked with us before and said, can you guys sort out the editing and all these kind of stuff? And that's it, right?
Yeah.
We had a sofa, and that's how we started.
And the first few episodes are very conversational.
Yeah.
I mean, it still is.
Yeah.
But I think the first few episodes are very unstructured. I think that was the word I was looking for. Hardly prepared anything. I remember showing up the first one and we were both joking to each other like, what are we going to do? What are we going to speak about? And we thought it would be, difficult. But then the more we did it, we realized, hey, you can actually fill 1 hour with substance.
Yeah. So now we run about 1.5 hours. We used to do it twice a week. We felt that was a bit too much. So now we've scaled it down to about once a week. And we think that that's just right.
And there'll be seasons we get more or less frequent.
Yeah. Sometimes we if we have a guest, we might have twice a week. And I think the growth has been quite good. So the biggest difficulty for our business right now is to try to find good data points. Because in the business that we're in, so we're publishers, we're content publishers, we can't track everything that is being posted, reposted. That's what I mean. So we can track our YouTube. So when we meet clients, we can tell them exactly the data from our platform. So we're multi-platform, I think 6 or 7 platforms. But what we cannot really tell them, and what we really want to know as well ourselves, is our actual reach. And that's your narrowcast distribution on WhatsApp. That's your forwarding. That's your pinching. So a lot of people pinch our content
they just
regularly
lift and copy paste our video.
It's fine. It's fine because we're in the business of news and people borrow all the time. But we do get pinched a lot, especially on a slow news day when there's nothing else going on. People just pinch and say KJ said this, Sharil said this, or if we say something newsworthy, which sometimes we do. So we don't really know our true reach, but we had some numbers recently, and those were quite good.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're growing exponentially like we did maybe the end of last year. Still growth, but slower growth. I think that's partly to do with some saturation as far as our podcast is concerned, but also to do with competition. If you've noticed, I mean, you said Nazmi is starting a podcast. Everyone with a microphone and with an opinion is starting a podcast now.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's we welcome it. I think the more the merrier. Since you talked about the business side of things, maybe we should speak about how we manage the balance between doing something that sponsors will be comfortable with, but at the same time remaining true to our brand and remaining true to what makes KS exciting for a lot of our listeners, which is that for the most part is unvarnished views. We will say what we think we believe, what we believe in. We will say what we think is right, even if it causes some unease among others. So I think that's the delicate balance that so far we've managed to strike with most of our sponsors, all our sponsors. It's more of who is willing to tag their name to Keluar Sekejap, I think is the question that many people asked us, and we are encouraged. I am encouraged, at least KJ, I'm sure you agree, that over time we started off with sort of semi-obscure B2C companies. We've now been sponsored by banks. We've been sponsored by financial institutions. We've been sponsored by household names. And I think it's a bit reflection on us, hopefully, but also a reflection on the maturity of the industry where they say, look, you can't always advertise only with super vanilla, boring, if I can say that, platforms. Sometimes to reach the audience you want to reach, you've got to go somewhere that's a bit spicy. And Keluar Sekejap, I think, is one of those platforms that is a bit, frontier, but people are willing to associate themselves with us.
No, I think we've given advertisers a completely new distribution channel, which I think is cheaper. You get more of a bang for your buck if you invest or if you advertise through podcasts like KS than if you do traditional MSM. And I think that because what we say continues to have that virality for a couple of weeks, your brand continues to get that circulation for a couple of weeks. So that's why people come to us. We know, for instance, what MSM charges. I think we're a huge discount to that.
Sure. Yeah.
And you get us, and we actually, we spend time to talk to our clients about how they want to project the brand during the show. So we did one with a mattress company a few months back, and that clip still goes around.
Yeah.
Of you jumping on the mattress and the orange juice
Yes.
didn't spill.
Yeah.
And we conceptualized that with the mattress company. I said,
Correct.
you know, why not Sharil jumps on the mattress and to demonstrate that the orange juice doesn't spill. Of course, we got into a kerfuffle with one of the ministers about our massage chair. Poor massage chair, didn't do anything to anyone, got scolded. But I'm sure that's good publicity.
Probably.
Probably good publicity.
Yeah.
We had no complaints from our client.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? So that's, I think, the big question. Now we're a business, we're a startup, I suppose. We employ 10 people full time now. Yeah, we make decent coin from the podcast.
No need to say so much.
Okay, yeah, okay.
We may.
We make okay lah.
We make okay lah.
We make okay lah.
Okay.
And it leads to other things.
Yeah, want to say about the other one, the KS lagi?
Before we go to KS lagi, it leads to other things like, so, you know, because I don't know how to manage us sometimes because I don't know what to call us. We're broadcasters, personalities. I'm not sure because we suddenly find ourselves in this world of your world of monetizing ourselves. And it's really weird because we've never done this before. I mean, we never imagined doing this before. So I've done canned drinks. He's done Baju Melayu. Yeah, so that comes from the podcast as well. You know, we suddenly personalities.
Yes, there's that bit. There is all these, you know, even the speaking on panels thing, I think has something to do with the fact that we are still public, quote unquote, public figures through the podcast. If we didn't have it, would we be invited as much? I'm not sure. And
probably not.
We discussed, we monetize that, or sometimes we get paid for it. Even in my work in the private markets, I think the podcast visibility helps. You know, when I want to speak to SMEs or companies or funds, and they realize, hey, I've got this sort of reach, then they make certain assumptions about our credibility. So all of that, I think I'm very grateful and thankful for, where you have all this spin-off sort of opportunities that would not have been obvious when we first started.
Yeah, and we're watching the space very, very carefully because we've noticed that, you know, a lot of the traditional media companies, the big guys, they're trading at multiples which are going down, which means that their business is being affected. And I know this as well because I apart from the podcast, I'm a radio broadcaster with one of the big radio companies in Malaysia. So I know a little bit about their business and the challenges of their business. So we're not quite sure where the money is going, where it's going to go to in the next few years. So we're happy to occupy this space. And Sharil and I decided while we're in this space, let's expand our reach. So KS runs as it's always run. So we have Keluar Sekejap, the political podcast. We have Kindred Stories, which is our second podcast, more on spiritual stuff that we do in English. So it's got a nice following, not as big, nice small following. That's international exposure, something that we want to grow over the years. That's going to take a bit more time. But we have this new venture that we're launching in the fourth quarter of this year, where we've teamed up with Catcha Digital. You want to take us through?
Yeah, so KS Lagi is a new project with Catcha Digital, in which we want to do content that is not the core podcast, political podcast, sit on the sofa content. So necessarily a bit lighter, necessarily a bit more relaxed, necessarily a bit more featuring figures or personalities that are not political. So imagine products such as the ones you would have seen on Netflix, where someone drives a car and somebody else sits next to that person and have a conversation. I'm not going to sing, so no karaoke. But somebody else on the next seat, maybe a corporate figure of some repute, can talk more casually about his or her life, talk about family, talk about health and fitness. So that kind of conversation, very different from Keluar Sekejap. Imagine a different kind of product where both KJ and I like to think that we are sort of health aficionados. in different ways. You run a lot. I go to gym quite a bit. So imagine content around those settings where maybe somebody can do a deadlift with me and then have a conversation about the lifestyle component of his day or her day after that. And similarly, somebody can run a 400 meter with you and then have a conversation. So that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So basically, we're creating a platform for lifestyle, the best version of yourself, but it's not just Cheryl and myself, so we're actively scouting for new talent.
Yes, anyway, maybe in this room.
To anchor this thing. So we'll create verticals for different talent. So Cheryl may be doing the product or the vertical at the gym, having a conversation. I might do something else, a fit check or get ready with me in the morning and talk about the top 3 news items in the morning. So it's exciting. It's going to be a lot shorter than KS. KS is your long form political show that will continue to run. But we feel that we can occupy the shorter space through KS Lagi. So so watch out for that. And we hope that we can have conversations with some of you about KS Lagi, which will debut in the 4th quarter of this year.
Very soon.
Yeah.
And I think just to wrap up this KS Lagi point, KJ, it's also, I think, bits about worth thinking about different monetizing opportunities too. So stick with this business team, right? Imagine product placements in situations and in contexts that will be more creative than just a podcast setting. Yeah. So that's one point. Second point is people have come up to us and talk about key man risk. Because both K and S are so fundamental to the actual brand that if one or both of us leaves, does that mean that the company or the brand goes to zero? It probably won't go to zero, but I think there's a legitimate question about how we make Keluar Sekejap the brand, not just about K and S. And that's where if we can start discovering new talent, have guest hosts even on the main show, KJ, I'm happy to sit out if somebody else can, I'm secure in myself, that somebody else can, sort of replace me for a couple episodes. And
because S, Sadek is also S.
Sure, yeah.
Just
of course.
FYI.
Very, very comfortable in my position.
You can't come up with a K, can you?
Not many Ks around. Not many good political Ks around. But no, stuff like that, right? And I'm guessing KS Lagi actually might be easier for us to discover that kind of, this new talent who can do stuff, not just us.
The decision was not just the key man risk, and I think Cheryl and I speak about this all the time, because if it was just a podcast for fun, we had 5,000 viewers in our first few episodes. That's fine. Now we have hundreds and thousands. Now we have people that we employ. So the key man risk is not just about us. It's about the business. Now it's a business. So we have to take this seriously, because at some point, one of us may walk away or may go back into politics or whatever, and it doesn't have the edge that it has right now. We can talk the way we do because we're not affiliated to anybody. And I think that's what people like about us. We have raw, unvarnished, quite authentic views about what's happening. And I suppose, unlike other political podcasts, maybe we have the authority to say it because we've been in that position. I've actually sat in as a member of the cabinet, and Cheryl's been there in various roles in politics. But other than the key man risk, the other reason why we wanted to take a step back from anchoring a lot of the products that we put out there in media is also because we are concerned about overexposure and saturation. People listen to us for politics. Do they also want to listen to us about cars, about lifestyle, about food, about getting ready, about fashion and things like that? To some extent, yes, but not too much. So that's why we are out there actively looking for people who share values that we can promote, that we can nurture and groom as anchors for KS Lagi.
Absolutely. Maybe in the last 10 minutes, KJ, our thoughts on the media landscape. We've spoken a bit about MSM. You mentioned about how their multiples are trading not so good anymore. That's a reflection of how, I guess, the market sees the shift, the long-term shift, the secular shift in the industry. As newcomers, I think, but also as some people who used to work with the press and media as public figures and politicians in the past. We may not have been in the industry, but we've engaged with the industry all our lives, right? what do you think lies in store in 10 years from now? Will podcasts become obsolete and something else comes around?
You know, you can't gatekeep news anymore. So I think that's a big development of the proliferation of technology and platforms. So gatekeeping news, you know, when I was growing up, the big media companies gate-kept news in a sense that they controlled the flow of news. You only had 3 channels back then, RTM 1, 2, and TV3. And it was just the 8 o'clock news, either on RTM or TV3 that you watched, and that's how you got your news. And then the internet came, the satellite TV came, internet came, and all that. But it was still a lot of gatekeeping done by news organizations. That's how people got news. That gatekeeping is gone because now you have straight from source news. So people are publishing, people are generating that content themselves. You're picking it up straight from the source. You're picking it up from people's TikTok feed, IG feed. This is what he said. There's absolutely no news cycle. It's a constant news cycle. It's 24/7. And I think, you know, that's where maybe, this is my thought, Cheryl, the relative success that we've had on KS is precisely because I think people were looking for a podcast that can make sense of all this proliferation of news that's being generated all over the place, where it's not curated anymore, gatekeeping, but they wanted people, not for us to gatekeep the news, but for us to curate and say, okay, this is what's happening. These are things that we think is important to talk about this week, and these are our thoughts about it. It doesn't mean that news that we don't cover is not important, but these are things that we feel are important to talk about politically.
It's an interesting point, KJ, because what you're saying is our success is in part because the curation capacity and function we play. How do we think about the other trend where polarization that's happening in the world and in society will mean that people start seeing and reading news that confirms, or confirmation bias? You just stay in your echo chamber. We've all known about the algorithms and social media feeding you stuff that you already want to hear. I guess we stand outside that. Are you concerned that over time, people like us, this curating function becomes less attractive?
I mean, I think it's inevitable. And you know, if I am frank, I think that any media news platform, even KS, we end up creating our own echo chamber as well. We think that we are trying to break through the confirmation bias. We think that we are breaking through the algorithms of polarization. So either you're right wing or you're left wing, either you are PH, you're BN, or you're PN, whatever it is. And we think that we are that center ground which is reasonable, which criticizes when they deserve to be criticized, give credit when it's due. But I think even then, that also creates its own echo chamber amongst people who are quote unquote center ground, reasonable, want to listen to both sides of the story.
Or we move, right? We move from this echo chamber to the echo chamber. There will be some episodes when people will say we're absolutely pro Perikatan Nasional, and the other episode, we're too soft on the government. So maybe we also move in different echo chambers.
Yeah, possible. And,
which is not a bad place to be as a brand.
And our stuff, I don't know if you know, I mean, I don't go every day, but sometimes on some days when I'm feeling, adventurous, I would go on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I would see who's sharing our videos. And you would see, people from this side of the political fence sharing our video. You'd see other people sharing our political videos. And sometimes it's not what you think. I mean, you would think that PN shares a lot of what I have to say, and you would think that PH shares a lot of what you have to say, because that's the persona, I suppose, that's been established. But sometimes it's the other way around.
Yeah.
When I surprise and I see something nice about the government.
Yeah. Are there trends, KJ, in terms of maybe topic of the year is artificial intelligence? My sense, just very quickly, my sense is we can talk about what AI will do to the industry, but I think what makes us unique is this idea of authenticity, which both of us have said many times. Do you feel there is a future, more optimistically, where content that can be seen to be authentic and therefore human and therefore not so much AI will have a premium? And is that the future that you hope we are in?
I mean, I think you've seen the capability of generative AI. So I've spent the last week playing around with, what is it called? Grok. This is this generative AI app that's embedded into Twitter. It's fantastic. You can, I mean, it doesn't quite get everything. So you can put Trump fighting Obama in a boxing ring as boxes, and then you'll get
out an image.
And it spits out an image. That one is not too bad. But then it's still learning. So there are things that it doesn't know how to depict quite yet. You can say, you know, like a cat driving a bicycle, then it'll put a cat driving a bicycle. But there are things that, you know, it still doesn't understand. Like if I put, you know, Cheryl and Kyrie as astronauts, they wouldn't know who we are yet. Yeah. So I've been playing around with it because I want to see where this is going. I want to see if that can entirely replace news delivery in the future. I think we're quite some way away from it. Yeah. I think in terms of nuance, comment, in terms of analysis, I still think I hope I can identify when I read something that's been spat out by ChatGPT and something that's been written by a subject matter expert with nuances. Yeah. I still hope that I can detect that. So AI helps. I'm sure our researchers use AI all the time, and sometimes we use AI as well to understand an issue so that we can speak about it better. But you know, this nuance of talking about things, you know, it's not going to go away anytime soon. But one last thought from me, and I wanted to share this with our audience. This is industry sharing. So we have challenges with two demographic groups for KS. One is that we are heavily male-dominated.
You know,
viewership. Yeah. So we get a lot of comments. So a lot of, when we go around, a lot of people come up to us, talk to us, say, you know, I watch your podcast and things like that. So I watch your podcast comes from men. I watch your podcast. My husband watches you every night comes from a lot of women. So that's not a great place to be in because it shuts the door to a huge segment of clients who don't find it attractive to advertise through us because we are not speaking to women. That's why we started KS Lagi, and we hope we can sort of balance it off with KS. We've accepted the fact that KS, Keluar Sekejap, the political podcast, is for middle-aged Malaysian men. And the other segment that I can share that we find very challenging is your zillennials, 18 to 25.
After 25, just spikes up.
After 25, you know, I mean, we are middle-aged. We are completely middle-aged male Malaysian men. I know I am. But 25 and below, can't
crack it.
Can't crack it. Yeah. So we've tried different things. We're doing these explainer videos now. So we have interns. So our interns have come up with this new product that we wanna start about trying to make our explainer videos even shorter. Because we used to do these explainer videos. I think we did 2 or 3 of them, and they were 10 minutes long. And they said that's just too long. They needed like 40 seconds, 1 minute. So we haven't cracked the zillennials quite yet. Yeah. And we want to crack the zillennials, not just because we find that that's a lucrative market, but I think we want to crack the zillennials because our whole brand is about education, actually. You know, so if people ask me, what is KS? Is it a political show? I always say KS is not I mean, I don't know, Sharon may have a different view, but I always say that KS is actually about educating ourselves and also the public about the big issues of the day. We found when we were in politics that a lot of people just simply didn't understand a lot of the things that were happening because nobody took the time to explain what was actually behind the news, behind the headlines, what was behind speeches that were being given by politicians. So because I believe that KS is also fundamentally an education platform, sayanglah kalau kita tak dapat the younger group.
For sure. Same thoughts, KJ. I think we influence conversations, influence conversations, and we want to influence them, or at least the power of suggestion for them to help come to their own decisions about particular topics and issues early. I suppose on a more optimistic note on that particular point, the question remains, right? And this will be probably the same for all media practitioners. when you miss out on just what do you call them?
Zillennial.
Zillennials. Do you just miss them out for the entire life cycle or for the entire lives, or do they come to you when they hit 25? And we haven't been around for long enough to answer that question. Maybe others who have their own show, have their own brands will know the answer. And I'm hopeful at least if we can't crack the 18 to 25 immediately, that we're at least getting them. Maybe it's a function of where they are in life. Maybe once you have a job, once you start thinking about getting married, once you have a kid, then the topics that we talk about become more resonant to you as opposed to when you're 18 and, partying or whatever it is that you do.
Okay, I think that we've come to the end of our session. So thank you very much, everyone. And if you are looking for an exciting, edgy, authentic platform to advertise in,
Don't shy.
give you bang for your buck, come and see us at KS Keluar Sekejap. Thank you very much.